Hey y'all, welcome to Kaya's virtual baby shower, baby. Kaya's about to tell you right now what she's fitting to do up in these parts.
So I let everyone be in participation in deciding baby's name. So everyone decided, I gave everyone 4 names to pick from, and they wrote them down, and we're going to put them in here, and we're going to pick the name.
Okay, so what you're saying is whatever name you pick is going to be the baby's name?
Yes.
You're only going to pick one name?
Yes.
And who's going to pick it?
Hermione's going to pick one.
Hermione's going to pick it.
And since Cash is right here, I'm going to let him pick one, and then we're going to put those 2.
Oh, so it's going to be 2. All right, let's go. Drum roll. What? She got one. Okay, let's see what name Hermione. Let's see what name did Hermione pick for the new baby. What's that?
Kyren.
Kyren. Woo!
She was a loving, sweet, caring person with a good heart, and somebody took the life of her.
The baby also didn't make it, so she passed away, and the baby passed away. She was in the bed sleeping when she was hit multiple times.
In the early morning hours of June 16, 2026, someone fired more than a dozen shots into a bedroom window of an apartment on Peppertree Circle in DeKalb County, Georgia. Inside that room, a 23-year-old woman was asleep next to her 2 young children. She was 2 weeks from giving birth to her 3rd child, a son she had already named. Investigators would later note something specific about the shooting: the angle of entry, the time, the location. Her family would say the same thing, separately and almost immediately. Whoever did this knew exactly where she slept.
She was targeted in that bedroom. She was sleeping with her 2 children in the bed with her. They made it. They was beside her sleeping when I got to the apartment. But I want the world to know that somebody took a blessing from all of us, and we will get justice. You just don't know how strong this family is together, how much we done lost. This will not be the last time you hear from us. We will get justice for you, Shakiya and Kyren. Kyren is her son's name. He was due to be born next week.
This is Morbid True Crime. Detailed documentary investigations focused on criminal psychology, forensic evidence, and procedural analysis. What follows is a reconstruction of a case that is still unfolding.
The young mother, just days away from giving birth, shot and killed early this morning.
That's right. Shakiya Pridgen's family says that she was just lying in bed with her 2 young children when those shots came through her window. We know that this happened in DeKalb County at the woods at Peppertree Apartments. Pridgen's mother says that her daughter was just laying in bed with her 1- and 3-year-old children when someone fired through her bedroom window 8 times, shooting and killing her.
The case centers on Shakiya Pridgen, a 23-year-old woman living in Decatur, Georgia, a city in DeKalb County just east of Atlanta. By the accounts of people who knew her, Shakiya was in a period of her life defined by momentum. She had recently moved into her first apartment on her own. She was raising 2 young children, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and she was weeks away from welcoming a 3rd child, a son whose name she had already chosen, Kyren. The weekend before her death, her family had gathered for a baby shower. Preparations were underway. A registry had been set up. The expected due date was in July. Her mother, Verdina Scott, described her in an interview with Channel 2 Action News. She said Shakiya had been going to church every day. She wanted to get married. She wanted to settle down. By Scott's account, she was doing everything a mother was supposed to do. Her father, Paco Pridgen, described her simply a loving, sweet, caring person with a good heart. Nothing in the documented picture of her life suggested what was coming. What would emerge, however, was that her family had almost immediately formed a specific belief about what had happened and why. The Peppertree Apartments sit on Peppertree Circle in the Decatur section of DeKalb County, a residential complex in what is otherwise an ordinary stretch of the metro Atlanta suburban landscape. In the early morning hours of Tuesday, June 16th, witnesses in and around the complex reported hearing gunshots. According to multiple news accounts, calls to 911 came in around 5 a.m. Officers and emergency medical personnel responded to the scene. Inside one of the apartments, they found Shakiya Pridgen. She had sustained gunshot wounds. Her 2 young children, the 1-year-old and the 3-year-old, were in the same bed. Neither child was physically injured. Paramedics transported Shakiya to a local hospital. She did not survive. Her unborn son, Kyren, also did not survive. When investigators documented the scene, one detail would become central. The shots had come from outside. Someone had fired through the bedroom window. According to preliminary accounts, approximately a dozen rounds had been discharged into that window from an exterior position. At the time of the initial response, DeKalb County Police had not yet publicly identified a suspect. The investigation was only beginning. But Shakiya's family, gathered in the rain outside the apartment complex later that morning, was already saying something that investigators would have taken note of. They believed she had been targeted, and they believed whoever had targeted her knew exactly where she slept. In a case that was less than 12 hours old, the statements made by Shakiya's family to reporters on the scene carried a specific kind of weight. The core of what they said was this: they did not believe the shooting was random. They believed Shakiya had been targeted, and they believed the person responsible was someone who had direct knowledge of the apartment's interior layout. Someone who knew which window opened onto the bedroom where she slept.
We know who it is. Shakiya doesn't bother nobody. And when they track you down, you will get justice for you. Justice for Kyren.
Justice for Kyren!
Her family told WXIA, Atlanta's NBC affiliate, that they believed law enforcement had already developed a person of interest and was actively searching for them. They were direct about it. They did not think authorities were starting from nothing. Her mother, Verdina Scott, standing with relatives outside the apartment complex, addressed the public directly. She said the family would get justice, for Shakiya and for Kyren both. She was clear that this would not be the last the public heard from them. In investigative terms, the family's statements were consistent with a specific type of case: a targeted attack with prior knowledge of the victim's location and routine. Whether that framing would be supported by physical evidence and investigative findings remained to be established. But it was the framework law enforcement would carry into the hours that followed. What happened next happened quickly. Within hours of the initial response, a significant law enforcement operation was already underway. The DeKalb County Sheriff's Office, working in conjunction with the United States Marshals Service, initiated a coordinated effort to locate a suspect. The involvement of the Marshals Service, a federal agency with specific fugitive apprehension capabilities, indicates that investigators had identified a subject and were engaged in an active manhunt. By the evening of June 16th, less than 15 hours after the shooting, authorities located their suspect. Devin Anthony, 26 years old, was found at a residence in the 1200 block of Quail Hunt Drive in Riverdale, Georgia, a city in Clayton County, approximately 20 miles south of the shooting location in Decatur. He was taken into custody without publicly documented incident. DeKalb County Sheriff Melody Maddox issued a statement shortly after the arrest. She described the shooting as an act of senseless violence that had claimed the lives of a young mother and her unborn child, and said her office had worked tirelessly to apprehend the individual responsible. Devin Anthony was booked into the DeKalb County Jail. He was charged with malice murder, feticide, and aggravated assault with intent to murder. He was held without bond. 3 separate charges, each one significant in its own right. The charges filed against Devin Anthony in the immediate aftermath of his arrest reflect the specific circumstances of what investigators documented at the scene. The malice murder charge is the most serious under Georgia law. It requires that the prosecution establish that the killing was intentional, that the person responsible acted with what the law describes as malice aforethought. It carries a potential sentence of life imprisonment, or, in certain circumstances, more severe penalties. The feticide charge is distinct. Under Georgia's feticide statute, the law recognizes an unborn child as a separate victim when that child is killed through a criminal act committed against the mother. By filing this charge, prosecutors have established that, in the state's view, Kyren Pridgen, who was 2 weeks from his due date, is a separate victim with a separate legal status in this case. The death of an unborn child at that stage of development carries the same weight under Georgia law as the death of any other person subject to the statute. The aggravated assault with intent to murder charge speaks to the specific manner in which the attack was carried out, the firing of approximately a dozen rounds into an occupied bedroom window. Taken together, these charges represent law enforcement's initial framework for what investigators believe occurred on Peppertree Circle in the early morning hours of June 16th. The investigation, however, remains ongoing. Motive has not been publicly confirmed. The relationship between Devin Anthony and Shakiya Pridgen has not been officially established by law enforcement at this stage. Those details, when they become part of the public record, will be central to understanding what actually happened and why. There are several significant questions that remained unanswered as of the time of this documentary's production. The first is motive. Law enforcement has not publicly stated what they believe drove this attack. No dispute, no prior incident, no documented conflict has been made part of the public record. The why of this case, what led someone to fire more than a dozen rounds into a sleeping woman's bedroom window at 5 in the morning, has not been answered publicly. The second is the relationship between Devin Anthony and Shakiya Pridgen. Investigators confirmed an active investigation was continuing, but as of this production, the sheriff's office had not publicly detailed any connection between the two. Whether they knew each other, in what capacity, and for how long, all of that remains to be established through the legal process. The third is the specific evidence that led investigators to Anthony within hours of the shooting. The speed of that identification and the multi-agency coordination that followed suggests the investigation had clear direction almost immediately. What underpinned that direction, whether physical evidence, digital records, witness information, or some combination, has not been publicly released. These are not details that can be responsibly speculated upon. They are details that will emerge through the prosecutorial process, through discovery, through court filings, through the legal proceedings that now lie ahead for Devin Anthony. What is documented is this: a 23-year-old woman, her 2 children beside her, 2 weeks from giving birth, was killed in her own bedroom. Her son did not survive either. A suspect was arrested within hours, and the investigation that will ultimately determine what happened and why is still in its early stages. Shakiya Pridgen's 2 surviving children, ages 1 and 3, were in the bed with their mother when the shots came through the window. Neither was physically injured. Her mother, Verdina Scott, acknowledged in interviews that the children were not okay in other ways. She said they had just lost their mother and that they did not yet understand what had happened. Scott said the family was strong, that they would take care of the children, that they would keep Shakiya's name alive, and that they would see justice for her and for Kyren. It is a quiet kind of weight, the kind that does not announce itself loudly but that settles into the specifics. A 1-year-old and a 3-year-old who will grow up without the woman who had just moved into her first apartment by herself, who was going to church every day, who was 2 weeks from the arrival of the son she had already named. That is what was taken. The investigation will work to establish the full account of how. In the early stages of a case like this, before the motive is confirmed, before the relationship between the parties is officially established, before the evidence becomes part of the public record, what investigators are often working with is a pattern. The pattern here is specific enough to be significant. A targeted attack in the pre-dawn hours directed at a bedroom window, the precision of the location, the timing, the fact that a suspect was identified and apprehended within hours. What investigators are ultimately reconstructing is not just an act of violence, but a sequence of documented choices that preceded it. Choices made by someone who knew or was willing to establish the details of where Shakiya Pridgen slept. The case against Devin Anthony is now in the hands of the prosecutorial process. The full account of what happened on Peppertree Circle in the early morning hours of June 16, 2026, and what led to it, will be established through that process. Until that record is complete, what remains is this: 2 children who survived the night their mother did not, a 3rd child who never arrived, and a family standing in the rain, saying the same thing over and over: we will get justice. Thank you for watching Morbid True Crime. Subscribe for more documentary investigations examining the psychology and evidence behind real criminal cases. This case remains active. Updates will follow as the investigation and legal proceedings develop.